forward. All right, Ms. Delatur, when you tell me we're ready, we'll start.
One moment.
Certainly.
Okay, we are live and recording.
Wonderful. Mr. DeForest, could you please take yourself off of mute? And you may begin your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure how these things go. I'm just going to say my name is Andrew DeForest. I am the defendant in the case. We had gone to trial, but due to my being ill multiple times and having doctors send letters to the court, that everything kind of got mixed up and messed up in terms of paperwork and I defended myself because I couldn't afford an attorney, but I guess I made a little too much to get a free one or something like that. So I was kind of stuck. So basically I messed up in the sense of where I had to get paperwork in by a certain time, and I wasn't aware of that. And then when I was made aware of that, I contacted the other side. I've made probably dozens of phone calls to Attorney Barnes, trying to get the necessary questions to answer for discovery so that I could present in trial. When Mr. Barnes wouldn't get back to me, I had to call his office and spoke with a woman that worked in the office. And she had told me she was going to mail the questions to me that I had to answer for discovery. However, when she mailed it to me, she mailed me the answers to my discovery questions from my land that I sent to my landlord originally, and not the questions that she had wanted me to answer. And she did state that she sent it to my email, but just like with my cell phone and the video thing, I don't have a computer. I use a work cell phone for basically whatever I can on my home Wi-Fi, which isn't very great either. So I can't open PDFs in my email. So everything has to come through mail for me to be able to read anything, basically.
So did you get it through the regular mail or no?
So I got it in the mail, but it was the same. He sent it once more time, and then the woman in the office sent it a second time, I believe. And both times was the same thing. It was the same envelope. It was the questions that I asked Mr. Silsby, who was my landlord, and his answers. They weren't the questions that they were asking of me.
Okay, and that was how long before the trial, Mr. DeForest? A couple of months, a couple of weeks, a couple of days?
No, it was months. In fact, I even brought it up in court to the judge during one of our many court appointments, where I went on and I said, I still don't have these questions. And in all Mr. Barnes did was argued that I was incorrect and that I had to have them and they must be here. And the judge never really made he didn't really make a decision on it. He just said, you have to get that in. And I said, I would love to get it in. It's just some questions to answer. It's not a big deal. I have no problem doing that. I've done everything all along thus far. I've had no issue.
Let me ask you a couple of questions, though, because one of the things I think that happened at the trial, you testified that you had made a number of rent payments in cash, but did not have a receipt. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, part of it.
And about how much money do you think you paid in rent by cash without a receipt? Do you have a ballpark number?
Yeah. So I don't have it written down. I have it written down somewhere, but it was about 13,000 roughly.
Okay, so let's assume it's 13,000 just for easy math. I think that at the time the judge found that you owed somewhere near 60,000. Again, I'm just rounding up. Right. So if you took the 13 off of the 60, right, it would be 47,000. Do you agree that you owe that?
No. So that's the whole thing is during the trial, I was never given the opportunity to say any of this. He cut the case short at the end of the basically they had called a bunch of witnesses in trial, and I was told, again, I'm not an attorney, so I asked the judge to give mercy on me to kind of help me along, and he did. He said, okay, now that that they've called up, that he's called up his witnesses, you can question them, but you have to stick to the questions that that they went over, basically the stuff that you just talked about. You can't go crazy and talk about everything else. Stick to the same.
So when do you think you last paid rent?
So I haven't paid. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep jumping off. So let me answer your first question. I have done. I've had a number of projects in the home where I've refinished the kitchen floor. I've refinished the bathroom. I've refinished that. I redid the whole vanity and the bathtub and the mirrors on the walls. I've done the floors multiple times because this house has a ton of water and mold issues in it. I've even had the Board of Health here because I fell through the back porch because it was so rotten and moldy that I fell through it that day, and I had to call them that day. They came right out. But there's been.
So are you saying the work you did should be offset against the rent?
It's actually way. That's what I was going to provide proof for in court, was I have proof that I've spent over 60,000, maybe even a little bit more than that, I think, at this point, in terms of like fixing stuff. And then the landlord telling me, hey, don't pay rent next month, take it and, go get all the clothes that were ruined in the flood in the basement. Go get all your kids.
All right, let me stop you for a minute. You said you've over 60,000. Is that both the materials that you bought and your time, or is that solely the materials?
So that's materials, and that's personal items that I've had to replace due to water and mold and mice and infestation.
So none of the 60,000 is for your time that you spent fixing it.
No, I never charged him time.
Okay. And you said that your landlord said, don't pay next month, just take it off. Do you have that in writing anywhere? Do you have an email or a text message or any kind of writing?
So I have, I do have it in text message form. I don't have it in email form. Like I said, my computer's a little spotty. But
did you give the judge the text message, the housing court judge?
No, so that's the thing is I couldn't, when I went to trial, because of that whole thing with the not answering their questions, the other attorney, Mr. Barnes, had all my evidence thrown out before I could even present it. So I couldn't give them evidence.
Let me ask you a few more questions. We're down to about 8 minutes, just so you know.
Okay.
You say that there was mold, the roof leak, there was floods and mice. Is that right?
Yeah, in our our whole electric panel goes out maybe every few hours. I have to go down and restart the electric panel because it just dies. So if my wife and I take our kids out for any extended period of time, we come home, our electric's been off the whole time. We've lost hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of food due to like our refrigerator being sitting there for 2 days because we were away
without power.
Yeah, and
when did you first notify your landlord of any of these things?
I guesstimate of over at least 2 years ago. When did you
first rent from Mr. Selsby? When did you?
I've been in since 2014 or 15. I've been here for about 8 years.
Okay. And when you first went there in 14, 15, were you paying rent then, or were you working on the house in exchange for them waiving rent?
Yeah, so a combination of the two. So when I first moved in, I paid the first and last and all that good stuff. And then I ended up getting laid off and also being ill. And Mr. Sylvie was, don't get me wrong, he's a very nice guy. He saw that I had 3 kids and 2 kids and 1 baby on the way. And he worked with me and he said, there's some stuff around the house that you can do. If you take care of it, we'll work it out. And that's what I did for, that's why I've never had an eviction notice. I've never had a pay or quit notice in 8 years. The only time I got an eviction notice was after the landlord got a partner named Chris, who's now his partner, 51% ownership of the property. When he came on, he wanted to move his daughter and his family into the house that I was renting. And because I had a lease, he got very upset. He ended up assaulting me, but I got thrown out in court because I didn't show up because of COVID. And basically, so the assault charge got dismissed. But basically after that, when he assaulted me, that's when this went crazy. I got the eviction notice. He says he had planned on doing it before that anyway, but he would move us out. But I wouldn't budge. I've been here for so long, and I've never.
So did this all start in 2021?
Yeah, there was never an issue before that. I never had one pay or quit notice. I had any so for them to say I owe this much money and over the 8 years of me living here, why wouldn't I get a pay or quit notice even one time? And
all right, so let me ask you this. So this is in order to go forward on your appeal, we're having this hearing. And I have to find two things. I have to find that you're indigent. I know you've referenced that you work, but you stated, I believe, that you receive public assistance. Is that right?
Yeah, me and my wife and kids are all on Mass Health.
Mass Health. Okay. So on my second question, which is that I have to find that you have a non-frivolous defense. So is your defense, these kind of are legal words, but I'm basing it on what you've just described to me.
Right.
Are you arguing that the condition of the apartment made it uninhabitable for you, that you couldn't live there because of the condition?
No, my defense is that if I am able to show proof, I have proof that the amount of money that I paid the landlord in rent, plus all the work that I did, plus all the materials and all the receipts for materials that I have, plus the landlord telling me when all my whole family's clothing was moldy in the basement because we went away for a weekend and all our dirty laundry which is most of our laundry that we left behind, was ruined. It's over $3,000 worth of clothes. He told me, don't pay rent for the next 2 months. And he had it on the ledger where it showed 2 months where I had no rent to pay. But then once they sued me or they filed eviction, they took all that stuff off of the ledger to make it look like I owed all that money that they had already deducted, which is why I don't
So,
feel like
Mr. DeForest, if you had to come up with a sum of money in order to proceed with your appeal, how much could you afford at this point?
Well, that's the thing is I really can't, because depending on what happens with this, my lease is up regardless. I'm just having a hard time finding somewhere to go with 3 kids, and renting an apartment or a house right now is really hard. I've literally been denied like almost over 111 applications since like last year, but it's because this eviction was pending and all kinds of other stuff. But basically, I have nowhere to go right now, so I have a little bit of money saved so that I can move if when it's time to move. I don't have quite enough to pay first-class security in Massachusetts. I'm probably gonna have to move to New Hampshire where it's a little bit cheaper to move. So that's where my situation. I don't really have much money at all. I had a 31-year-old brother-in-law, and my father-in-law, who's 51, both died in the past 2 years, just suddenly of random.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I've had to, and I'm the only one in our family that could afford to pay anything towards the funeral. So like that's what tapped me out, in terms of financial stuff. I know had this not happened, I could have been paying my rent all along, but once I got that eviction notice and I really dug into the numbers and looked at all the stuff that I've done and all this for it ended up showing that like they ended up owing me about $11,000.
I just want you to know you're down to about 2.5 minutes.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of the fact that it was upside down like that. I had a trusting relationship with Mr. Silsby where I would go to his house weekly and bring him cash instead of paying monthly, just to show him, just to make sure he gets paid every time.
Did you ask for a receipt and he refused, or the topic of a receipt just not come up?
So he gave me receipts sometimes, but a lot of times he would have me meet him in random places, or if I went to his house, he would be in a rush or in a hurry, and he'd say, "Oh, I'll mail you the receipt," and then I would never get the receipt in the mail. But because I've trusted this guy for so long, I never really thought to call him and ask him for those receipts. I guess that's my bad for trusting someone, but that's kind of that's why that whole situation is where it is in terms of like the receipts. Again, there was a ledger that was sent to me before this whole situation happened that showed basically like all this work that I had done. It didn't show all the stuff that he deducted off for like personal, like I've replaced my couch 3 times because of mold. I've replaced my son's bedroom set because the roof leaked all over his, bedding.
Did you present the ledger to the housing court judge?
No, I wasn't allowed. There was no evidence
because of the discovery.
Yeah, because of the discovery. Okay. Had I been able
You're down to about a minute, Mr. DeForest. I just want to give you a heads up.
That's okay. So had I been presented the opportunity, if I was an attorney, or if I had an attorney, I think I would have won this trial because I would have had all the evidence that I need to prove my case that I don't owe money and that they in fact owe me money. And it's not uninhabitable because I've made it inhabitable by fixing things that they refuse to fix. And by just going down and, you know, flipping the breaker on every few hours, it's a nightmare, but it's something I have to do to keep the, you know, the house moving along. So, you know, it's not
Understood.
uninhabitable, but I paid to keep it habitable, and they were aware of that. But then once they wanted to move their family in, when he got this partner, that's when all of a sudden I wasn't good enough for the place and they wanted me out. And I didn't want to leave because I had nowhere to go. And they basically said, well, you know, we're going to evict you. And then he assaulted me. And then basically he moved the eviction a lot quicker once I threatened to go to the police, which I did do. Go to the
Mr.
police.
DeForest, your time has expired, but I'll give you a minute to sum up for me.
Okay. So again, my whole point to this whole situation is I have tons of evidence, pictures, text messages. I have witnesses. I have people that were here when the landlord came here to look at damage. And then he told me right in front of them, you know, fix this. Unfortunately, one of the people that helped me fix a lot of the stuff passed away. My father-in-law at 51 years old, suddenly about 2 years ago, a little more than a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So he was going to be one of my witnesses, and unfortunately he passed. But I have other witnesses that I could prove that I've done all this work. And if you look at the amount of work, it just logically, without even looking at the numbers, anyone could tell that it's well over $59,000 worth of work I've done in terms of, and that's not even including any labor, you know, anything like that. Because
All right, I think we're going to have to leave it there, Mr. DeForest. I do understand your argument. Don't hang up, but I'm going to ask you to mute while I hear from Attorney Barnes.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Attorney Barnes, if you could unmute yourself, and when the clock starts, you may begin. All right, please
Thank you.
proceed.
Yep, thank you. Attorney Tim Barnes here for the plaintiff Silsby Farm. Your Honor, as you honed in on the second prong of what Mr. DeForest has to prove in order to waive this bond is that he has to show he has non-frivolous defenses. And as the Tamber case, as I'm sure you're well aware of, that's defined frivolous defenses as defenses that are not supported by any evidence. And that's
So
exactly
can you
what
explain to me what Mr. DeForest was talking about in terms of the discovery? I have a sense that was it answers to interrogatories that were not completed?
It's, yeah, I can actually give you the timeline because it backs up the motion in limine that Judge Del Porto allowed. On October 19th of 2021, about 5 months after the eviction complaint was filed, I had mailed and emailed Mr. DeForest requests for interrogatories, request for production of documents, and request for admissions. He didn't respond to them. I emailed him and then mailed him again on November 10th of 21, reminding him of what I sent and that I need a status as to the responses. Still didn't get anything. On December 20th of 2021, I emailed him again and said, you know, you still need to respond to these discovery requests or you're not going to be able to produce any evidence at trial. Still nothing. So on May 10th of 2021, I filed a motion to compel, which I believe the court has the entire record and the docket. The court didn't schedule that for a hearing for various reasons, but ultimately, when the trial got scheduled on September 6th, I was left with having to file the motion in limine, which outlined, again, what I just outlined to you when I sent the discovery, every time I requested, you know, a status and still nothing. And I might also add, because this was a virtual trial, Mr. DeForest got a notice from the court saying, if you're going to produce any exhibits, you have to produce them 5 business days ahead of time and also provide a copy to the other side. I never got any of that. I did, however, submit the plaintiff's list of exhibits and provided them.
Did that include the ledger that Mr. DeForest referenced?
Yes, it included the ledger, and it does show what payments were made, what payments were missed. And
was there anything on the ledger that shows sort of an offset, if you will, for the work Mr. DeForest was doing?
I believe on that particular ledger, yes. But here's the thing: when Mr. Silsby requested him to provide the receipts. He didn't provide the receipts, which again
Well,
leads
Mr.
to
DeForest says there were no receipts, right?
no receipts for the items that he said that he
Oh,
fixed.
for the work done in the apartment.
Yeah, yep,
Okay.
yep. So ultimately, we end up with a situation where Mr. DeForest, because of his health issues, fell behind. It had nothing to do with the work or the condition in the property. As a matter of fact, and this
Does your
is one of-
client contest that there was mold, a leaky roof, there was mice, things like that?
correct, he did contest that. The only
Did
thing
the
that
Board of
came up
Health
in,
come out?
no. No, there were no Board of Health complaints filed. There was Board of Health did not come out. There was testimony, and I believe Judge Del Porto mentions this in his decision about a wiring issue, but
Mhm.
that was never notified or told to Mr. Silsby until Mr. DeForest was well behind in his rent. And again,
So how do we come up with 59,871.08? What is that reflective of?
that is the unpaid rent from, he fell behind back in December of 2016, roughly 1 month after he moved in. So it's a combination of the rent due from then all the way through the time of trial, because he did make some partial payments, which shows up on the ledger. But ultimately, the amount that was due is 51,000, I believe, is what Judge Del Porto found. And then I believe the additional amount is the attorney's fees that are allowed under the lease.
And the use and occupancy that the judge set in the housing code was 1,400. Was that the amount of the rent that was in place under the terms of the most current lease?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's the same amount that's been from 2015.
So your client, after Mr. DeForest fell behind in December 2016, so that's right, we're going on 6 years. Your client continued to re-execute the lease with Mr. DeForest, even though there was a deficiency.
That is correct, because at the time, it was a 1-year renewable lease. And at the time, he did work with him because he, being Mr. Silsby, did work with Mr. DeForest because of his health issues. There's no dispute about that. And that leads me to one of the exhibits that we produced at trial was this harassment restraining order hearings that Mr. DeForest brought against one of the other partners in the Silsby LLC. But what he testified to in those hearings was that he fell behind because of health reasons, nothing about Board of Health issues, nothing about condition of the property, nothing about him.
Well, let me ask you if I could about the harassment order. My understanding is not Mr. Silsby, but the other owner was at least on the ex parte ordered to stay away from DeForest. Is that right?
Correct.
And then Mr. DeForest said he didn't show up for the hearing, so there were no charges, but was there an evidentiary hearing on the 258E harassment prevention order?
Yes, as a matter of
And
fact,
did
there were
Mr.
2
DeForest
hearings.
show for that?
He did. He
And
did. 'Cause I
after
have
an
to-
evidentiary hearing, that was not extended.
Correct.
Okay, were there criminal charges pending? Do you know?
No, there. I know
Or
there's
a
not.
clerk's hearing, perhaps?
No.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Is there something else you wanted to tell me about the amount of money?
No, what I was getting at is the fact that there is no evidence of any defenses here, largely, and it fits squarely in the Timber case because there was no evidence presented by Mr. DeForest at the trial. A lot of it because of the motion in limine, but he also was notified by the court's notice, like I said, that if he wanted to produce any evidence, he had to submit it to the court ahead of time and provide us a copy, which he didn't do. So the motion in limine was allowed, and it's in the court's record as to the reason why it was allowed. Now, in terms of the testimony, Mr. DeForest was given an opportunity by Judge Del Porto if he wanted to say anything else, and he was asked twice if he wanted to, and Mr. DeForest's response was either something to the effect of no, or now I don't have anything else to say. So then Judge Del Porto said, all right, I'm going to take this under advisement. And that's how it was left. He had an opportunity to say it. He was called as part of my case in chief. So I asked him questions, and Judge Del Porto references that when he says that the request for admissions indicated that, the notice to quit was served and Mr. DeForest received them. So he did have an opportunity to present his side of the case. Again, no evidence to support any of.
Was there any effort to try to work this out with Mr. DeForest? He did just tell me that he's looking for a new place, and obviously having 3 kids, that's an extra step in terms of looking to relocate. Has there been any effort recently to try to resolve this?
There were several efforts at the pretrial conferences, but most of the responses, most of the time was, I can't pay you and find another place to live. That's what he kept saying. So he was allegedly saving money to move out. Now this goes back over a year. So here we are, left with a trial where we ended up getting a judgment for possession. A judge found that a bond should be paid because it's not supported by any defenses, let alone, frivolous or non-frivolous. There's no evidence of any defenses that he produced. There's no records of it. He had plenty of time to do it. It was, again, my requests were sent regular mail and email.
So it wasn't derogatories, it was requests for admissions?
Requests for admissions, requests for production of documents, and interrogatories.
Okay.
So I would ask the court to affirm Judge Del Porto's October 24, 22 decision, ordering the bond amount that he states and ordering the continued use and occupancy.
All right, well, I have a lot to review, which I will do, and I thank both of you for your time. It was very helpful to hear from each of you. I'm going to conclude the hearing now. I wish you both the very best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So we don't get to talk again, you said? No, we just had our
Correct.
time.
There's no rebuttal at the appeals court. Thank you.